everyone, and welcome to SOCAP Australia's webinar with Charlie Trkulja from TRK Coaches and Consultants. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name's Fiona Brown and I'm the CEO of SOCAP Australia, and I'm also here with Kathleen Allen in the SOCAP office, who's working in the background to make sure we can all connect smoothly and easily today, which I'm sure we will. Now, before we get started in this very informative webinar on this new standard, let me go through some housekeeping tips. Firstly, for all of us as delegates, you will be muted, so don't worry, we won't be able to hear any of your conversations at your computer. Now, Charlie, of course, you are the exception, so please make sure your mobile is off. If anyone is having trouble hearing the audio via your computer, please use your phone. Dial your state's appropriate numbers as listed in the confirmation email that's been sent to you previously or in the question box that you can see on your screen, and enter your participant passcode, which is 22079303, followed by the hash key. That's 22079303, followed by the hash key. This webinar is being recorded, and that means that we'll send you a link after the event when that's finished, and that should be within a few days, and you'll be able to view that on our YouTube channel. There'll be lots of Q&A throughout this webinar because we do want it to be as interactive as possible, and Charlie has advised that he'll take questions at several points throughout the presentation. In order to ask questions, have a look at your screen now, and at the bottom left-hand side you'll see that there is a message box. Above that, you can also see who is participating in the meeting. You can type your questions here at the very bottom and it will be seen by everybody. Alternatively, you can select my name, again that's Fiona Brown, and send me a question privately. I will then find a time when Charlie pauses to ask him the question. If we do start running out of time, we may hold a few questions back for answering at the end of the webinar. Now, we've noted that sometimes there is a lag between what you see and what the presenter is saying. So throughout, we will reference the slide number so that you can see that we are on the same page there, just to allow for all of the systems to catch up. We will send you an evaluation email after the event, as well as a PDF of the presentation. So please make sure you do send us any feedback and comments you have on this webinar. Now, firstly, let me introduce you to Charlie Trkulja, our speaker to all of you. So Charlie is the founder and principal consultant of TRK Coaches and Consultants, a boutique consultancy that specialises in making their clients more customer-centric through better management of complaints. His previous roles have included customer advocate for the National Australia Bank, head of customer relations for the Colonial Group, as well as Assistant Director, Consumer Protection for the Trade Practices Commission and the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. When it comes to SOCAP Australia, Charlie holds the record as the longest-serving SOCAP board member with a consecutive run of 14 years. Over those years, he has served on various SOCAP committees and was the SOCAP President in 2005. Those roles give Charlie a unique and practical perspective on implementing the prevailing complaint standard. So now, without further ado, over to you, Charlie, to please update us on the new standard and how we need to activate that and implement it into our organisations.
Thank you, Fiona, for that introduction, and thank you to Kath and Liz from the SOCAP office for their help with this webinar. My name is Charlie Trkulja. I will be leading the SOCAP Express webinar on the new 2004 Complaint Management Guideline. Welcome, everybody. We'll move on to the first slide. And, interesting. Technology is wonderful when it works. Here we go. Excellent. I'm on the first slide. So the things that we'll be covering is a detailed examination of the key changes to the 2014 standard. We'll cover how those changes affect our complaint handling policies now. We'll examine or recommend an effective communication strategy to implement the new standard. I'll also go through a case study that shows how to drive customer-centric change in your organisation. It incorporates all the key elements of the new standard and the previous standards in terms of how to make things happen. We'll also spend lots of time dealing with tips as well as traps to avoid as you implement the new standard. Fiona already done a great job of covering me and in terms of the introduction, so I won't spend too much time talking about myself, apart from highlighting a couple of points about the previous roles. As an Assistant Director at the ACCC, one of the key things that was implemented was the work I did on actually taking action against the Advanced Bank. That led to the introduction of the Code of Banking Practice back in about 1993. And very soon after that, the first ever standard on complaint handling, the Australian standard, came through in 1995. So I was very heavily involved in implementing that standard initially at the State Bank of New South Wales and then as the head of customer relations at the Colonial Group. With the introduction of 2006 standard, I was at that stage at the Commonwealth Bank and then very soon after that at the National Australia Bank, which meant that I was responsible for implementing the new standard across those organisations. So lots of experience in implementing the standard and lots of involvement in consumer affairs. So we've got a poll question for all of you. Kath is about to put up a slide, and what we want to know is, have you read the new standard, the new guideline on complaint management in organisations? So simply answer yes or no. All right, we need a few more people answering. Excellent, thank you. All right, it looks as if we've got most of the people answering this with no that they haven't, so about 65, 64% haven't read the standard yet, 35 have. So that's basically in line with the sort of results that we've been getting in running the webinars and the masterclasses up until now. Look, the key point here is the standard has been around now since about October. It's important that if you haven't purchased the standard, if you haven't read it, that you please do so as quickly as possible. But in this seminar, what we're assuming is that everyone's up to date as far as the 2006 standard, and what we're highlighting are the key changes between the 2006 standard and the new 2014 standard. So there is a number of key changes, and look, I'll start with some broad comments. And the 2006 standard was really a complaint handling guideline concentrating on quality. The new Australian New Zealand standard is now a complaint management guideline, and it really concentrates on practical procedures to make organisations more customer-centric. It's a much thicker, bigger document with a lot more information in it. But the main thing is that it's really, really practical. So the 2006 standard was 9 pages of guidelines and 8 appendices. The 2014 standard is, in terms of guidelines, 13 pages long now, so almost a third larger, and almost twice as many appendices. There are now 15 appendices to the guideline. But as I said, these are really practical guidelines, practical appendices that will help you make your organisation more customer-centric. The key appendices in 2014 standard relate to Appendix E, unreasonable conduct by complainants, We'll talk a bit more about this later on, but one of the key things is to identify and advise our complainants what we consider unreasonable conduct to be, and when and how we will deal with unreasonable complainants. So this is a very practical appendix that provides very useful information about how to update your policies and procedures around this particular issue. Another one is on effective apologies. Again, very important to get that right. In the past, lots of concerns about apologising. Does that mean that we're admitting liability? What does it all mean? Lots of concern about that. Again, this particular appendix covers things in detail and points out how to do so efficiently, effectively. For me, one of the key appendices is the one of the responsibilities of management, employees and complaint handling personnel. A fairly detailed document, but it's almost something that we all will use, we will need. In a lot of ways, it sets out maybe what your position description need to be for the various roles in complaint management. And from my perspective, one of the most important appendices there is the one on root cause analysis. It's a detailed guideline on investigating, preventing and reporting customer complaints. So, as I said, lots of practical stuff there that will be very, very useful. Now we'll move on to the guidelines themselves, and this is where it gets a little bit heavy. There are a lot of things to cover. Some of them are quite detailed. I don't intend to read directly from the slides. In some cases I will do that, just to highlight the key points. But you will get a copy of these slides. You will see them, so that the detail will all be there. So, look, for me, one of the key starting points is the definition of a complaint. It has now been extended to cover organisations, to cover staff, the handling of the complaint itself. Some people have looked at this definition and said, but hang on a tick, I've always been logging my complaints about my organisation, the staff of my organisation, and the difficulties around handling complaints. You may have done that. A lot of organisations chose not to log complaints about their staff as a complaint, because under the previous definition of a complaint, if they read it literally and interpreted it literally, they didn't have to. With the new extended definition, it is now mandatory to log and manage customer complaints about the organisation itself, staff, as well as the complaint handling process. Another key change is when it comes to accessibility. What the new standard says is that the organisation's complaint handling policy should be accessible from its website's homepage. So the first page. It doesn't have to be in detail, but there has to be a link to your complaint handling process from your homepage. And my suggestion is to use the word complaint, not customer feedback, not contact us, but the word complaint. A number of organisations, both in the private and the public sector, are already doing this, and it's just the best example of being accessible to your complainants. So key change going forward, your homepage needs to provide your complaint handling processes and procedures, or at least a link to your complaint handling processes and procedures. Lots of new material in the standard about training. Management commitment has to be demonstrated through the provision of adequate resources, including training and support for all staff handling complaints. All of our staff need to be trained on complaining policies, procedures. Again, as I said, lots of work done on training in the new standard and very much highlighted. So Again, we should be reviewing adequacy of resources on a regular basis, but also the appropriateness of training of the complaint handling staff. As you can see there, 9.1c, when it comes to collecting information and possibly reporting, we should be looking at the appropriateness of the training provided to complaint handling staff and actually keeping a record of the sort of training that we have provided to our team. Specific training on receiving and resolving complaints from disadvantaged and vulnerable people who need assistance. Again, very important. I think one of the things that's happened in the past is that complaint handling staff didn't see themselves as being responsible for assisting disadvantaged and vulnerable people in making their complaint. This is a very interesting development. So the training required now going forward is that there is training specifically on receiving and resolving complaints from disadvantaged and vulnerable people who do need assistance. And then when it comes to all staff, meaning all staff in your organisation, not just the complaint handling staff, now need to be aware of the procedures to follow and what information to give to complainants. So everyone out there needs to be able to refer customers, the people using your organisation to the organisation's complaint handling policies and procedures. And again, all staff need to be aware of their roles, responsibilities, and importantly, authorities in respect of complaints. In other words, authorities in terms of what are they able to do, what delegations have they got, and how best to use them. When it comes to objectivity and fairness, the new standard highlights the fact that each complaint should be managed in an objective and an unbiased manner, and specifically that the organisation's complaint management system should provide avenues for review of the complaint outcome by people other than the original decision maker. In other words, for example, if you're in finance and your organisation finds that this particular customer is now in the collections area of the organisation and collections has made a decision about this particular customer's complaint, if the matter is escalated through to the internal dispute resolution team, that complaint should not be going back to collections for review. The independent review should be happening elsewhere, obviously preferably in the customer relations area. I know this has been a hot issue in some organisations, but really what we need is for an independent assessment or review of the complaint outcome. So that is really, really important going forward. And I've touched upon it already. All organisations should implement a complaint management system that includes appropriate policies and procedures, clear lines of responsibility, and appropriate delegations for complaint handling staff in particular. Again, when it comes to that objective review, we shouldn't be sending escalated complaints back to the business unit that made the original decision. And when it comes to the delegation to overrule that original decision, the delegation should sit within customer relations to actually be able to overview and overrule the original decision and actually have the delegation to implement its own decision without the need to go back to the original source of the complaint, the original business unit that reviewed the complaint and said no in order to implement the decision. Equity is a new, no, it's not new, but again, it's highlighted. The organisational complaint handling policy should address the issue of how to manage the conduct of complainants who act unreasonably. So that goes back to that appendix that we talked about earlier on. What we need to do is have clear procedures and policies about what is an unreasonable complaint, what is an unreasonable complainant, and how we will handle those situations going forward. That can be made very clear from the outset in our policies, procedures, in the information that we provide on the contact page, in our brochures, and that will help everyone with dealing with these sort of complaints. Surveys. The organisation should undertake regular action to determine the level of satisfaction of complainants with the complaint handling process. Some organisations do this and they do it really well. Others haven't been measuring the satisfaction of complainants. So one way to quickly get feedback is to consider implementing a Net Promoter Score. So the writing in purple is my suggestion rather than a part of the new guideline. So obviously there are many ways to do that, but I think one of the quickest, most effective, efficient ways to do it is to use the Net Promoter Score. Basically simply asking the question, as a result of the way our organisation has handled your complaint, how likely are you to recommend our organisation to your family and friends? More information available on Net Promoter Scores, elsewhere, and a very simple way to judge and get feedback from complainants about our complaint handling processes. Social media. Well, since 2006, you'll be happy to know that Facebook, YouTube and LinkedIn appeared around 2006. But the number of Australians using popular social media platforms has skyrocketed. And at the moment, when we look at those figures, Facebook, 13.8 million users, YouTube, 13.5 million users, LinkedIn, about 3.3, Twitter, almost 2.8, and WordPress, the blogging site, over 6 million Australians using social media. So here's a question for you. Does your organisation currently log complaints made via social media? Kath, if you could please put up that poll question, that would be fantastic. All right, well, we've got a very interesting group of people participating in this seminar, because I can tell you at the moment it's running at about 72 do and 27% don't. Most of the surveys that we've conducted on this, having done various webinars and masterclasses, is around 50-50. 50% of the participants so far are logging social media complaints, and 50% are. So the good news there is that most of the people in this webinar are actually already doing it. Thank you, Kath. Well, surprise, surprise. Going forward, according to the new guideline, what we need to do is actually manage, log, and resolve complaints that come to us via social media. So consideration should be given by organisations as the most appropriate medium for communicating with a complainant, taking into account organisations' needs in the express view of the complainant. For example, using the same medium by which the complaint was made or by a medium requested by the complainant. For example, social media. And Appendix B talks about organisations should have provide flexible methods of making a complaint, including social media channels. One of the questions that's come up often in the masterclasses that I've run so far is, look, I'm from a very small organisation. We don't have a Facebook presence. We don't have a Twitter presence. Do we now have to have it? The short answer is no, you don't. But it's an opportunity for you to consider. However, if you currently, as an organisation, do use Facebook, you do use Twitter or other forms of social media, you need to have a process in place to deal with it. And in most organisations they do, and it's a separate business unit that actually handles complaints or feedback that's come through social media. Well, nothing's stopping you continuing to do that, but the important step going forward is that all those complaints now are logged on your database, that you're actually using the feedback that you're getting through social media. And look, it pretty much becomes like any other channel of lodging a customer complaint. So that's one of the key technical changes or technological changes that's picked up by the 2014 standard. One of the key features of the 2014 standard is that it covers the responsibilities of the complaint handling staff. But it takes it a step further because it actually provides some clear and specific responsibilities for the chief executive of the organisation. And with this, look, I will go into a little bit more detail than some of the others because I think it's one of the most important developments as far as the standard is concerned. And really, one of the major reasons that the guideline has gone from 13 to 14 pages is that because in some detail it covers the responsibilities of the chief executive, the manager responsible for customer complaints, the operational managers, and the staff of the complaint handling functions, both internal dispute resolution and as well as external dispute resolution. So with the chief executive, he or she now becomes responsible for ensuring that the complaint handling policy, procedures and objectives are established within the organisation. They need to ensure the promotion of awareness of the complaint handling policy and procedures and cultivating a people focus throughout the organisation. They need to ensure that information about the complaint handling policy is easily accessible and communicated in an easy-to-understand manner. The key is over one of the key points, appointing a complaint handling manager with clearly defined responsibilities and authority. So obviously with this guideline, no one is actually expecting the CEO to do a lot of this stuff, but they're responsible for ensuring that things are happening. And one of the key ways to do that is to appoint a complaint handling manager with clearly defined responsibilities and authorities. Not only that, but it's also the CEO's responsibility to ensure that there is a process in place for timely and appropriate notification to senior management of any significant complaints or systemic issues identified through complaints. Key point. In other words, there needs to be regular reporting going to the CEO and senior management of the organisation about any significant complaints or systemic issues identified through complaints. Ensuring that there's a process for regular reporting, complaint handling generally, and ensuring that complaints are managed appropriately. The guideline then goes on and talks about the manager of the complaint handling unit and their responsibility. So again, there are a number of bullet points there, but look, from my perspective, nothing unexpected and nothing unusual. But the key point is probably point B, reporting to senior management on the operation of the complaint handling system, and reporting to senior management on significant complaints and systemic issues or trends identified through the receipt of complaints and service problems with recommendations for improvement where appropriate. So the CEO is responsible for making sure that someone is in the role and that there is reporting going to the CEO and the senior management team, but it becomes the responsibility of the senior manager, the head of the department, the assistant commissioner, if you're in the public sector, whoever is responsible for the complaint handling functions in your organisation now has a responsibility to report to senior management on significant complaints and systemic issues. So no more excuses about the people at the top of the organisation not knowing what's going on. We simply do have to have policies and procedures in place and people in place to do the role. So one of the things that I talk about is that it becomes almost a responsibility of the manager to be the internal whistleblower, to blow the whistle on any significant complaints and any systemic issues and trends that are identified. This guideline makes it very clear as to who's responsible for escalating those issues within the organisation. But not only do they do that, obviously there's the responsibilities in terms of identifying and allocating resources needed for effective and efficient complaint handling, reporting to staff and other relevant stakeholders about issues of concern through complaint handling. Look, again, there's, I don't intend to read each slide, but these particular sections of the guideline make it very clear as to what the responsibilities of the manager are. And then it goes on to also provide responsibilities for the operational manager. And even more detail is available in the appendix associated with the guideline that deals with the responsibilities of the various roles within the organisation. But the operational manager basically is the person that is the hands-on person that's making sure that things are happening effectively within the complaint handling department. And when it comes to staff responsibilities, again, one of the key things there, and I can't emphasise it enough, they need to be appropriately trained in complaint handling and the implementation of complaint handling procedures relevant to their role, including specific training on receiving and resolving complaints from disadvantaged and vulnerable people who need assistance, to be able to identify and effectively respond to people's support and communication needs and preferences. So we need to be a lot more open to customer complaints, and we need to be appropriately trained. So all I can say is that SOCAP conducts a number of absolutely brilliant courses on managing customer complaints, dealing with the more difficult complaints. There's a range of training options available, and I can't recommend SOCAP highly enough when it comes to training of complaint handling staff. And I noticed that David is asking whether there'll be a provision of the deck of slides. The short answer to that is definitely, David, yes, you will get a copy of these slides delivered to you electronically, and you will get a recording of this webinar, so you'll be able to play it over and over again. Only kidding. Again, in terms of staff responsibilities, all staff handling complaints should treat complainants in a respectful and courteous manner, comply with all complaint handling reporting requirements determined by the organisation, and comply with the organisation's complaint handling policies and procedures. Time to start typing some questions. Notice David had one. This is an opportunity to ask some questions around the sort of topics that we've covered so far. Is there anything that you would like me to elaborate on? Anything that didn't make sense? So take the next 5-10 minutes to actually start typing up some of those questions, and I'll deal with them as we go through. Implementation. To me, it's all about implementation, and here is a little quote from Tony Robbins. It says, contrary to popular wisdom, knowledge is not power, it's potential power. Knowledge is not mastery, execution is mastery. Execution will trump knowledge every day of the week. And to me, it's all about implementation. In other words, you can have all the knowledge you like, but unless you use it, and you use it efficiently and effectively, it's not much good to you or your organisation. So it's all about implementing the knowledge that we have. And sometimes they can be difficult. It can be very difficult. I love this cartoon. And often it is as simple as that. You know, we're looking to implement something, but the other people in our organisation are way too busy doing things the way they've always done them. Trying to get people to stop, take some balcony time and deal with these issues is going to take some doing. But we'll talk about some strategies to make that happen. And good to see those questions coming through. Please keep them coming.
Do you want to take those questions now, Charlie, or would you just like to me to hold those till later?
I think let's just give people another couple of minutes to come up with those questions, and I'll take them about 2 or 3 minutes. So,
okay, lovely. Thank you,
Fiona. Look, this is a rhetorical question. Who in your organisation has the responsibility to advise the chief executive of his or her responsibilities under the 2014 standard? I can tell you during the master classes we got a range of different answers. Is it compliance? Is it someone in legal? Is it someone in government relations? Is it the chief risk officer? Is it the department head if you're in the public sector? There was just a whole range of responses to this question. My challenge to you is that as someone who is probably in a customer relations role, and hopefully, if you're the manager or the head of the department, my suggestion to you is that it's probably your role to let the chief executive officer of the organisation know what's going on. So I suggest that as a first step, I know this has got a lot of small writing on it, but my challenge to you is, as a first step, send this email to the CEO and copy in your boss. And I'll read the first paragraph and the last paragraph to make it easier for everyone. And it's basically, dear boss, whoever it is, I participated in the SOCAP webinar yesterday to get the latest information on the new standard on complaint management. There are a lot of changes to the standard, but the most important change that I discovered is that it now places significant new responsibilities on the chief executive of the organisation. The new standard states it outlines the responsibilities of the chief executive. And I suggest you finish with something like, I thought it best to immediately advise you of this development and seek your approval to organise an implementation team, in brackets including legal, compliance, communication, training, whoever you think will help you the most, to identify the gaps in our complaint management policies and procedures and take action to meet the requirements of the new standard. Your feedback would be much appreciated. My suggestion to you is that if you send something like this out, you'll get a positive response from your chief executive. And at the moment, 60% of you haven't read the new standard, and this is something fairly, I hope, new to you. But as a result of having this information, my strong recommendation to you is that you'll let the chief executive know of their new responsibilities in complaint handling. Or if you don't think you can do it, make sure that your boss sends this sort of information. Don't wait for compliance to do it. Don't wait for legal to do it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. My experience is that when I joined, I'll give you a clear-cut example. In 2007, I joined the National Australia Bank after a bit of a problem that it had with foreign exchange dealers, but it also had problems with complaint handling and everything else. So when I went through, I noticed that the 2006 standard hadn't been implemented. There was no escalation of systemic issues to anyone. There was no cause analysis being done on complaints, and I asked why it didn't happen. The bottom line is everyone assumed that it was somebody else's responsibility to implement the new code of the new standard. It just simply hadn't been done. So in a very quick way, with regulators breathing down our necks, we had to do that very quickly and efficiently. So my challenge to you is, if your CEO doesn't know that they've got responsibilities under the new standard, it's your job to let them know. Fiona, now's probably a good time to deal with some of those questions. So Bernadette says, NPS, can you clarify further on this point? Are you saying we should contact customers who have complained to get their feedback on their experience in resolving their complaint? Bernadette, the short answer to that is yes. The standard, the new standard, advises that we should be surveying our complainants and getting their response in terms of their satisfaction with our complaint handling policies and procedures. So that's now in the standard. Look, I don't remember the particular section off the top of my head right now, but it is covered in those slides, on that slide where I recommend thinking about the Net Promoter Score is one quick way, efficient way to do it. Look, often it's as simple as sending an email. You can send standard forms, but often these days, even on telephone conversations, there are Net Promoter surveys being conducted as a way of getting a satisfaction measure in terms of the way we handle particular calls. So you don't necessarily have to survey all of your customers. You could be doing a sample, but we need to get that feedback. Maxine says, we're a large organisation with a decentralised complaints function, so there is no one particular complaints manager. Do you see this as a problem, given that each department are responsible for complaints for their own area? My strong suggestion is to have a centralised complaint handling process. Again, with many years ago when I joined the Commonwealth Bank, you had state-based complaint handling functions, and the challenge I had was to make the organisation more effective, more efficient, and the quickest, most effective way to do that was to centralise. You still needed people with complaint handling skills in each state, but all the key functions were performed centrally. All the responses to the regulators, all the responses to the various ombudsman schemes, privacy commissioner, whatnot, were dealt through one particular one department. Basically, it helps with quality control, helps with training, and at the end of the day, look, you don't have to have a centralised complaint handling process, but my experience is that it does make the organisation more efficient, more effective if you do. David asks, will ASIC release a regulatory guideline on these standards? The last one regarding complaints was Regulatory Guideline 165 in 2006. David, you're absolutely right. That particular guideline does stipulate the 2006 standard. I think it's only a matter of time before ASIC does that. In the past, the various regulatory guidelines and even codes of conduct in the various industries would either mention the complaint handling standard. My suggestion to those organisations and everybody else is to make their codes, guidelines more up-to-date, is simply to use the words, the prevailing Australian standard on complaint handling. So it doesn't mean that they've got to update the guidelines every time there's a new standard. Not that that happens very often. So we don't know exactly when ASIC will be reviewing the guidelines, but considering the negative publicity that ASIC and a number of other organisations that have received media attention in the last couple of years have received, I can't see how this particular standard will not be adopted by ASIC, and basically, in particular, around the responsibilities of the CEO, making sure that the CEOs and the senior management team is aware of significant systemic issues. So I think it's only a matter of time, and I certainly wouldn't be waiting for ASIC to update its guidelines before contemplating on implementing the new standard on complaint management. I think, look, you may as well get in early, be one step ahead, and think about how to do it ahead of your competitors and have that competitive advantage. By all means, please keep those questions coming, and I'll keep moving. So when it comes to implementation, here are some tips. You are the consumer affairs professional in your organisation. This is your area of expertise, and others are expecting you to take the lead. Now, looking at the number of, or the names of the participants, a few of them are familiar. Some of you are fairly senior within your organisations when it comes to the complaint handling functions. So, again, I think it is your role to take the lead and implement or certainly be a part of the team that implements the new standard. What you need to do is advise your internal network of the new standard, advise them of your vision and what assistance you need in order to make it happen. And my suggestion is start with a low-lying fruit that you can implement quickly in your team. So look at for example, the roles of in your team and compare them, the current responsibilities and even position descriptions to the key functions as outlined in the new guideline, as outlined in the appendix to the new guideline for specific roles. So nothing stopping you updating those position descriptions now, because there's a good chance that you're the person that's responsible for making sure that your people have got the right skills, the right attitudes in terms of who you hire in customer relations to perform or complaint handling, both IDR and EDR to perform those functions. So there are lots of things that we can start doing straight away that we don't have to wait for a thorough examination of what's required to go forward. Tips. I suggest that your implementation team is a multidisciplinary team. In other words, do use someone from compliance, do use someone from legal, do use frontline staff as well to deal with customer complaints, someone outside customer relations, but someone that deals with the first point of contact. How will they deal with the new standard? How will it impact them? And what they'll have direct knowledge in dealing with customer complaints and how to best implement things going forward. I think the other thing you need to do is network, keep informed of developments, keep an eye on what's happening in terms of SOCAP publications. Think about the symposium this year. Think about consumer directions and the articles that are in there. Keep reading those and keep talking to the people that you know in your industry, your competitors, in terms of what they may or may not be doing right now in terms of meeting the requirements of the new standards. And as you are with this implementation team, one of the key things you need to do is conduct regular progress reviews. Every fortnight, every month, ask yourself, are we on target? Why are we doing this? And is there a better way to do it? Is there a more clever way to do things that we need to do going forward? Are we taking the most efficient, effective implementation on board, or are we making things very complicated for ourselves? Implementation. So I've already touched on some of the things that we might need to do in terms of implementing the new standard, but I suggest that the following documents will need to be updated to reflect the new standard. So your complaint handling manual will certainly need to be updated. The definition of a complaint needs to be widened, and you need to make sure that you're capturing all appropriate complaints. as a hint, complaints about staff. There were organisations out there that were not logging complaints about their financial planners because they were staff. It wasn't a complaint about a product or a service. It was an allegation about their staff. But as that financial planner was not covered under the definition of a complaint, some organisations didn't bother logging those complaints. Interesting. Again, if you're a regulator, if you're a public organisation, update your complaint policy, your terms of reference. Your brochures need to be updated. If you're in the financial industry, the product disclosure statements need to be updated. Obviously, your website, intranet, needs to be updated. So your website, the homepage. Intranet, if you've got your complaint handling policies, procedures on that for your staff, all that needs to be updated. And as I've already mentioned, your position descriptions need to be updated as well. And I think I've answered David's question. He says, if the standard does not have to be updated from the compliance point of view, the disclosure documents need to be updated. My suggestion to you, David, is that yes, they should be, but from a compliance perspective, I suspect you're saying regulatory guidelines and whatnot. Look, it's only a matter of time, as I said earlier. So nothing stopping you doing that earlier and giving your customers the latest, the best information, rather than waiting. Implementation. Lots of reports will need to be updated or implemented for the first time to reflect the new standard. One of my suggestions is a monthly report to senior management on any significant complaints and or systemic issues identified through complaints. A monthly reporting on training undertaken by complaint handling staff. You'll certainly need to keep a register going forward in terms of training provided to your staff in terms of complaint handling. One suggestion is if you're a large organisation, most large organisations that I've worked for, in terms of complaint handling procedures and training all the staff around the organisation's complaint handling procedures, it was all done over the intranet. There would be specific compliance units that were updated on a regular basis. Once a year, all of the staff had to go through and basically make sure that they read through all the material and basically answer questions and have a 100% success rate in terms of answering their questions around complaint handling procedures before we knew that they'd met the requirements for complaint handling training. I suggest a monthly report on complainant satisfaction. So again, that was that suggested net promoter score. So as you're doing your monthly reporting on complaints, think about providing some information on a monthly basis, saying, our net promoter score, this month is 20% up from 15%, last month. So we need to have that information in there. And one of the key points is, a monthly report suggesting improvements to minimise repeat complaints. So again, those systemic complaints, those significant complaints, what the new standard says and basically requires of the manager or the head of the department is to provide some feedback as to possible suggestions on how to eliminate customer complaints. So I think we should be doing that on a monthly basis, if not more regular where required. Obviously, some things shouldn't wait for a month. If there's something important, urgent, do not wait for the monthly report to escalate that to your senior management. As I said, think of yourself as a whistleblower. If something is about to attract regulator media attention, if it is in the hands of the regulator, you need to escalate that immediately to the senior management of the organisation. And very importantly, training needs to be updated to reflect the new standard. So we've touched on that all staff should be aware of complaint handling, and probably think about doing that through an internal process. Think about doing that through the intranet or some other electronic internal means. Probably more efficient to do that than face-to-face training of literally all of your staff, all of your frontline staff. All internal dispute resolution and external dispute resolution staff should be trained on complaint handling policy, processes and procedures prior to undertaking complaint handling activities. Bottom line is, before people actually start dealing with customer complaints in an IDR, EDR role, make sure that they've gone through an induction process. What I used to do with my staff is buddy them up for a week or so with your best performing staff member, probably the one that crosses all the T's, dots all the I's, follows policy and procedure without taking too many shortcuts, and make sure that they're well aware of what your expectation is, how you do things within your organisation before actually exposing them to that first customer complaint. And all IDR, EDR staff should be trained to receive and resolve vulnerable complaints from vulnerable and disadvantaged complainants. I think that is really, really important and a significant change to the standard. So again, there are lots of organisations out there that can assist with that sort of training, and I'm sure SOCAP will be running some courses on this, or if they haven't already organised them, they'll be thinking about doing it very, very soon. And implementation. I like this cartoon. Everyone wants to change, but when we ask the question, who wants to change, not too many hands go up. So the challenge that I have for you is we too need to change. Change is coming as a result of this standard. What we need to do is change the way we've done things in the past and think about better ways to do stuff. We need to be open to change, and we just need to do it. Now, I'll just remind people that, look, we're on page 51 or slide 51. It's approximately 1 o'clock, so we've got about half an hour to go in this webinar. I do want some more questions from you, and I'll probably take them in another 5-10 minutes. But I'll also leave room at the end of the seminar, probably for the last 5 minutes or so, in order to deal with any questions that you might have. And look, if we go over time by a few minutes, I don't think anyone's going to mind a little bit, going over. But by all means, if you need to log out at 1:30, please do so. So one of the key points, key issues going forward is root cause analysis. The new guideline highlights this. The new guideline provides an appendix on this issue. You will be provided with a summary of that appendix as part of the various handouts that you will receive after this webinar. But the standard itself basically says all complaints should be classified and then analysed to identify systemic, recurring and single incidence problems and trends. Goes on to say that root cause analysis is one method the organisation can use to identify underlying reasons for complaints. I'd also say or recommend that it's probably the most effective way to do it. So just a little bit more information on root cause analysis. So RCA is a structured process whereby the causes of high risk, significant recurring problems are forensically analysed. by a multidisciplinary team who could go beyond a human cause and identify the latent process, system or organisational causes, and most importantly, make a plan for the rectification and prevention of the problem. So don't assume that you have to do root cause analysis on every complaint that comes through. My suggestion is that you certainly categorise every complaint that comes through, and that you ask the person closing the complaint to identify the root cause of the problem. So my suggestion is that any matter that ends up in your IDR and certainly in the EDR process needs to be categorised, and the individual themselves closing the complaint needs to ask themselves, why did this complaint come about? What needs fixing? And drill down, and from their perspective, log the cause of the complaint, as well as the product associated with this complaint, the service, and the department location of where the problem occurred. So, the key point also is that what they should be doing is answering the question, does this complaint raise a systemic problem? And if it does, that's the point where those complaints identified as potential systemic problems need to go to a root cause analysis team in order to analyse and determine whether it is a systemic problem and how to best go about resolving it. So the root cause process is all about digging. And I'm sorry that there's a bit of a formatting problem with this particular slide. So look, in the purple rectangular boxes, it should be define the problem, investigate cause, generate solution. So we dig. We define the problem by asking what is the problem. We investigate the cause by the 5 why process. Why did that happen? Okay, we've got that. So why did that happen? And continue to ask why until we get to the root cause of the problem. And step 3 is to generate the solution. In other words, what is the most effective, efficient way to fix this problem so it doesn't happen again? So we keep digging until we find the answer. What stops us from doing more in terms of root cause analysis? What stops us from then implementing things that minimise customer dissatisfaction? You'll be happy to know, or not surprised to know, that in the masterclasses, one of the questions we asked was, does everyone categorise complaints? And the answer was, of course we do. The question I asked is, put your hand up if your number one complaint has been there for 6 months or less. And something like about 60% of the hands were up. Leave your hand up if that issue has been there for more than a year. 50% of the hands were still up. Leave your hand up if that complaint has been there for more than 2 years. Approximately 40% of the hands were still up. So, and to me, I can understand that sometimes you can look at your number one complaint and decide that, look, there's not much we can do about it. It's always going to be there. We don't think we can get rid of the root cause of this problem. But that doesn't stop us from working on complaint number 2 and complaint number 3. But what stops us? My suggestion is often it's the cost to eliminate the complaint. Often it just simply isn't a priority for the business unit that's causing the problem. It's not a problem for information technology, the people that need to program the systems to make sure that this thing doesn't happen again. They're too busy doing other things. Remember that cartoon where we've got a wheel that needs to go on that cart? They're all too busy, pushing things, not using a wheel. And often no one has responsibility, or we're just simply too busy, pointing the finger or not pointing the figure because we don't want to be the bad guy. So there are lots of things that stop us, but often it ends up being as simple as this, a cartoon. Yes, our standards are very high. We even have double standards. what I mean by that is that we all say we're customer-centric. We all say that we've got, we meet all the standards. But often there are double standards. There are things that we say that we do, and there are those things that we do. And the priority often change, sometimes for the wrong reasons. So what we're looking for is customer-centric change. And that's one of the things that this new standard promotes. What we're looking to do is do things that are in the best interest of the customer. So I'll use a case study of the National Australia Bank because it's one that I was directly involved in and one that used aspects of the 2006 standard, but it also was ahead of its time in that it actually uses most, if not all, of the components of the new 2014 standard, in particular the involvement of the CEO of the organisation. So the NAB case study, and the one I'd like to highlight is, when it, and again, it goes back to that, cartoon. Who wants change? We all do. Who's actually changing? Not too many. Well, the NAB actually decided to change the bank and the way it was seen by the community. So one of the key things it did was to address the number one complaint that it had. So as this slide points out, why is NAB abolishing overdrawn account fees? Account overdrawn fees are the single largest driver of customer complaints to NAB. Abolishing account overdrawn fees will help us build better relationships with our customers and help our employees who have had to deal with the issue of fees. So it was the number one issue. We actually convinced the CEO and the senior management of the organisation to abolish that particular fee. And the way that was done was that the NAB at that time actually escalated every complaint that was escalated through the internal dispute resolution and external dispute resolution and analysed the root cause. It analysed the product, service, business unit responsible, and any potential systemic issues were escalated. We appointed a systemic issues manager who reviewed the potential systemic problem and escalated the systemic issues to a systemic issues committee. In a lot of ways, that systemic issues committee was the root cause team. And that team consisted of the relevant product manager, compliance, legal, operational risk, corporate affairs, and customer relations. One of the other things that we did was we actually, as a key performance indicator for the complaint management staff, is we rewarded people for escalating potential systemic issues. We encouraged our staff to log things appropriately, the root cause, and escalate the potential systemic issue. It actually meant doing a little bit more work with each particular complaint, in that if there was a potential systemic issue, they'd have to provide more information to go to the systemic issues manager and to the systemic issues committee. A major refunds team was appointed to rectify the systemic problems and process the refunds. But the key point here was that there was a monthly meeting with what was known as the Customer Council, and that particular meeting was chaired by the CEO of the organisation. So the CEO knew and considered all complaint trends, every systemic problem that the organisation had, and that particular committee looked at 3 insights identified by customer relations, potential issues that may come up as a result of the complaints and the feedback that we were seeing. One insight was chosen by the CEO and the senior management of the team for a deep dive, and at the next meeting, the appropriate head of the business unit had to advise the council what action was being taken to address the issue. Obviously, having the CEO involved was crucial to the involvement and to the elimination of this problem. Once we had the CEO convinced that this was a good idea, everybody else fell into line. And in terms of people saying, hey, was this successful? And in terms of the the abolition of the overdrawn fee. This was a media release issued by the Chief Executive Officer, Cameron Klein. So the bottom line is, yes, it was successful. What happened was that NAB went from being one of the lowest customer satisfaction scores to one that led the major banks for the first time in 2009. There were lots of new customers that came on board. 820,000 people became NAB customers. So again, could not have been done without the involvement of the CEO. Having systems and processes in place that encouraged better training of staff to identify the root cause problems, better training of staff to identify vulnerable customers, and escalate those issues appropriately and have something done about it. The other thing is, all of these functions fell within the responsibility of the complaint handling department. We had the authority, we had the delegation to deal with these issues. They didn't have to go back to another business unit that had the power to overrule customer relations. We had the delegation to overrule other parts of the organisation, and the decision we made had to be implemented by the business unit that we deemed to have caused the problem. And one way the philosophy we introduced was basically around complaint handling, of handling the customer complaint as if it was the managing director's mother, the CEO's mother. So what I mean by that is, in terms of training the staff on better handling complaints, it was very difficult to get the point across in terms of how to show appropriate empathy, vulnerable customers. So I changed it around one day because I was doing the face-to-face training of my staff, obviously with the assistance of other people. But the breakthrough was when I said, how would you treat this customer if you knew that she was the mother of our CEO and that she would be having dinner with him in 2 nights' time? Surely you want her to be an advocate for our organisation, and you want her to be saying good things to our CEO. Treat the customer or the complainant as if they were the CEO's mother. And then what we did was to extend that further. So when it comes to policies, procedures, systems in place, letters that were being sent to customers, we'd sit down with our marketing people and say, would you send this letter to the CEO's mother? And if you wouldn't send it to the CEO's mother, don't send it to anybody else. Would you put the CEO's mother through that process, through that loan application process, or whatever it may be? So it just got people to be, really focused on being, more customer-centric. So at the end of the day, it was all about, making customers advocates for the organisation. So that's how we got people to become more customer-centric. So just a reminder that we've got about 15 minutes to go, and it would be great to see some more questions. Tips. I argue that the manager of the internal dispute resolution and external dispute resolution team is now, under this new guideline, deemed to be the whistleblower in the organisation. You've actually got the responsibilities to blow the whistle and highlight the key significant systemic problems to the senior management of the team. My suggestion is that you work with corporate affairs, media relations, and depending upon what your organisation is, the scale of it, the size of it, if you're a smaller organisation, obviously you won't have some of these functions, but you'll have key supporters, key people to deal with customer complaints. They're no doubt, legal, that they will be able to assist you. But, in larger organisations, if you've got customer experience, government relations, audit, compliance, operational, risk, private, work with them to identify the key issues, and better still, have them involved in those reviews of customer complaints and providing effective, efficient solutions to problems. And my challenge to you is, again, to change the culture of internal and external dispute resolution. So you need to change. And one way to do that is to basically help them focus in terms of what their responsibilities are. And looking at the new guideline, my suggestion to you in terms of objectivity and everything else, it really boils down to 3 sentences. What we need to be saying to our people is, we're not paid to be righteous, we're not paid to defend, we're paid to resolve complaints. At the end of the day, I think that's what the function of people in complaint handling is. So what are the top tips? Well, work with like-minded colleagues in your organisation. You need to work with compliance, operational risk, product managers, and basically come up with better ways to deal with complaints. We need to use the functions that we have under the new standard and think about how to best eliminate the causes of dissatisfaction to customers. And we do that by working with like-minded people within our organisation. What we need to do is create that continuous improvement culture within our organisation. And the way we do that is to provide actionable reports, making recommendations to minimise complaints. No point just going out and providing trend analysis. Complaints are going up, complaints are going down, they're going sideways. But what we need to be doing, and the way we provide value to our internal customers, is to provide actionable reports that make recommendations to people in terms of how we can reduce customer complaints, how we can minimise customer complaints, or at least what we can do to help them more effectively, efficiently resolve customer complaints in the first place. What I suggest is that you use the new Australian standard, your codes that are out there, guidelines, the regulatory guidelines that are out there, and lots of codes in various industries, lots of legislation out there that requires us to meet the requirements of the Australian standard. Aged care, for example, in its acts requires compliance for the members to adhere with the prevailing Australian standard. Implementation traps. You don't have to be the most compliant organisation out there, but you do need to comply. What I mean by that is that people have spent literally hundreds and sometimes millions of dollars complying with codes, with guidelines, with regulatory guidelines, ASIC regulatory guidelines in the past. You don't have to be the most compliant organisation out there, but you need to comply. You need to be seen to comply, and you can do so without engaging consultants, who are very, very expensive and who often don't have practical experience in the field. The other tip is, don't use the standard as an excuse to build an internal complaint management system. There's a good chance that the complaint management system you have in place right now is good enough. My suggestion to you is, again, all you need is, if you haven't got social media as a channel of receiving a customer complaint, it should be relatively simple to add that to your current complaint management system. In terms of highlighting that the complaint is a potential systemic problem, it's a tick box. Not very hard to do so in your existing complaint management system. So don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, building a new complaint management system to meet all the requirements, but use what you've got most effectively and efficiently to do so. And the other suggestion I have is, don't wait for clarification from regulators or external dispute resolution schemes before you go ahead and start implementing the new guideline. There is no way that, for example, ASIC will not want your CEO being aware, responsible, and making sure that complaint handling is in place. They will want that happening. So there might be a bit of a delay in terms of as to when that happens, but it will happen very, very quickly. Okay, about 10 minutes to go, so more questions, please. In summary, the key issues end up being the new complaint definition. Significant step, and I've noticed some commentators out there on LinkedIn talking about the new standard and saying there aren't significant changes. Yes, there are. They don't even mention the change in the complaint handling definition and the responsibilities of the CEO and others. So to me, there are significant changes between the previous standard and the current international standard and the new Australian-New Zealand standard. I know that the new Australian-New Zealand standard leads the world again when it comes to complaint handling. Australia was the first complaint handling standard out there in 1995. We again lead with this particular standard with our friends from New Zealand. So the definition of a complaint has changed. Make sure that all of your policies and procedures have been updated with the new standard definition and of a complaint, and that we're actually logging all of those complaints. You need to be on the home page, no questions asked. Your marketing people might not like it, but have a look at some websites out there of your competitors, people in your industry, and the question I ask is, if they're doing it, why aren't you? Social media, again, now all those complaints coming via social media need to be logged. And again, what we should be looking out there is expressions of dissatisfaction, potential systemic issues. And one of the issues that often comes up in these conversations is, oh, gee, social media, what does that mean? What if they're just expressing an opinion? Well, they can be expressing an opinion, but is it an expression of dissatisfaction about your organisation, product, service? If it is, my suggestion to you is that you respond and refer them back to your customer internal and external dispute resolution policies and procedures. You don't have to, via social media, engage and have the whole world see how you're responding to a particular complaint. But my suggestion to you as a starting point, if someone expresses dissatisfaction and what their feedback falls within the definition of a complaint, suggest that they talk to the right people within your organisation who have got the responsibility to deal with their particular complaints. It's all about training. We need to improve our training significantly for complaint handling staff dealing with internal dispute resolution as well as external dispute resolution, but as well as that, all customer-facing staff. All staff in your organisation out there now need to know what the complaint handling policies and procedures are. Systemic issues, root cause analysis, really, really important. My view is that one of the reasons the new standard has been updated and introduced and why we have the new responsibility as the CEO is to make sure that systemic issues are actually addressed, that those significant complaints are dealt with appropriately within the organisation and aren't lost within the organisation, and customers aren't passed from one person to another, or worse still, that their complaint is being reviewed by the person who made the original decision the first time, the second time, the third time. So there has to be an independent process in place to to make sure that their complaint has been dealt with appropriately. And those chief executive responsibilities, I feel, are the key change to the new standard. That's what makes it stand out from the previous Australian standard, and that's what makes it stand out from the international standard. It's the first standard on complaint handling anywhere that actually places some responsibilities on the chief executive of the organisation, whether in the private sector, public sector, doesn't matter. What your organisation, roles and responsibilities are. If you're dealing with customer complaints, the chief executive now has those responsibilities. And in broad terms, we're now talking about complaint management. It's all about managing customer complaints. It's not about handling customer complaints. It's not all about saying, yes, no. It's all about reviewing those complaints, asking the question, why is this happening? How can we best make sure that doesn't happen again? And to me, it's all about effective, efficient, quantum leap implementation. In terms of the implementation you're about to do, there is the new standard, but while you're doing that, keep asking yourself, why are we doing this, and is there an even better way to do it? How do we most effectively, efficiently do this going forward? And at the end of the day, it's all about being customer-centric. We seriously need to look at things from a customer perspective and make sure that we're doing things in the best interest of our customers. Because often, if we do things that are in the best interest of our customers, again, going back to that NAB example around penalty fees, well, it was great for customers of the National Australia Bank because they no longer paid that fee. It was great for the staff, frontline staff and complaint handling staff of the NAB because they simply no longer have to deal with those complaints. 40% of all complaints are gone, and it means that those people can better use their time to provide a better service to our customers. What happened was that 820,000 new customers came on board, and considering the profit margin per customer, the profitability of the organisation went up and the shareholders were happy as well. So it was a win-win-win. All right, so that is what I wanted to say to you and highlight about the new standard. It's time to deal with some more questions in the time that we have left. Fiona, have you got any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. We have a few moments left for questions, so if you do have any questions, please just shoot them through now in the the complaints box, but we've just been talking about complaints in the question box there. Thank you very much, and we'll take those questions now. Charlie, I have a question. Is there a time period that you think that organisations should start to look at implementing the standard in their organisation?
I think the time is now.
Right.
There is nothing stopping organisations from implementing this standard now. As I mentioned earlier, and I've had feedback from others saying, hey, but ASIC hasn't come out, so I'm in financial services, do I really need to do something about it? The short answer is no, you don't have to, but why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. In that this is going to be good for your customers, this is going to be good for your staff, this is going to be good for everyone. So, I think what happens is, as I said earlier, people think that they're very, 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 very busy and that, there are other priorities. But surely providing a better service and eliminating customer dissatisfaction is one of the best things that we can do for our customers, our clients.
Oh, absolutely. And my other question is around the CEO responsibilities. And obviously, we've all worked with CEOs who can really quickly understand the benefit of understanding complaints and knowing the need to get a handle on those. But if you've got perhaps a CEO that might need a little bit more support in understanding that and understanding the new responsibilities, and you've given the toolkit there with the CEO letter, but what are maybe another 2 or 3 quick tips that some participants here might need with a CEO that may not necessarily understand those responsibilities that are going on herself or himself so quickly?
I think what we need to do is be brave and send that email, because one of the things that I've experienced over the years is that often it was left up to me to let the C&E know of what their responsibilities are around complaints. Waiting for other people to do it didn't work. And when I did, they really appreciated it. I can tell you, for example, when I joined the NAB, the managing director, the CEO, didn't see the Roy Morgan customer satisfaction scores. They read about him in the newspaper. That wasn't a part of the reporting. They didn't know that we had, over 20 systemic issues, at the regulator. But once the CEO realised that we had 20 systemic issues, questions started being asked. People didn't like the fact that the CEO knew that we had systemic issue problems, because all of a sudden those things became more of a priority than what they thought was their priority list. So believe it or not, your CEO wants to know about this. They don't want to hear it from ASIC, a regulator, or read about it in the paper. So, my suggestion to you is, yes, by all means, deliver the good news, but it's also your responsibility as the head of customer relations or, a person managing customer issues to deliver the bad news before anybody else does. It is actually appreciated by most CEOs. And people sort of say to me, Charlie, you were lucky, that your CEOs were supportive. I was lucky because I made the CEOs supportive. We pushed and prodded and made sure that they were aware. And once they were aware, they were supportive. But I think that's what we need to do. We just need to be a bit braver in terms of the information that we provide and the work we cause for ourselves too.
Well, thank you very much, Charlie, for that. And look, if I can't see any more questions coming through, so just a last call for any more questions. If you do have any further questions that may just come to you after the close of this webinar, by all means you can send those through to the website at socap.org.au, and we will endeavour to get those answered for you. So I want to thank everybody for participating today, and I hope you have found this webinar informative. We will be sending you an evaluation survey along with the slide deck from today's full presentation, and also a recording of the webinar as well, and we'll be sending those out to you over the course of the next few days. Please fill out your evaluation survey, as we do like to hear your feedback on all of our products and services, so we appreciate you taking the time in doing that for us. Thank you, Charlie, for your very informative webinar today on the new standard. I'm sure we've all learnt a lot, and we'll now go away and look at how we can implement some of these thoughts and tips into our own businesses, including SOCAPs. All participants today will also receive the toolkit, which comes with a set of templates for use in your business, and that will be sent through to you along with today's slide deck. So again, thank you to everybody. Thank you, Charlie. And if you do have any further questions, as I said, you can please send those through to socap@socap.org.au. And again, many thanks to you all, and have a lovely afternoon and also a very happy Easter. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.